So it's the 8th of January 2024. We've come together to practice the Dhamma, and this is the third day of our retreat. And yesterday there was one individual who ordained as a monk, and then tomorrow there'll be the ordination for 7 people. So taking up the brahmacharya, the holy life. So when we keep the precepts to the level of the 8 precepts, or the 10 precepts, the 227 precepts, this is taking up brahmacharya, celibacy, or the holy life. And our perfectly self-awakened Buddha, that he had cultivated this quality, the parami of Nekkhamma, of renunciation. And he had done that for many lives. But one life in particular is Janaka, that he was a king in that life, and he noticed that his hair was starting to turn white, and then he gave up all of his royal assets and wealth to his children. And then he left and became a hermit and cultivated this parami of Nekkhamma. And he practiced until he gained very deep samadhi, very deep jhana. And there was a lot of goodness that resulted from that. That when he passed away from that life, he was born into the Brahma worlds, and he stayed there for a very long time. And so we can see that when we train our minds to cultivate this parami, the spiritual virtue of Nekkhamma, of renunciation, one of the benefits this gives rise to is that of samadhi. Because this renunciation, it gives us the opportunity to train in samadhi more. And so we take up this renunciation through keeping the precepts, the 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 227 precepts. And we're doing that for maybe 20 days, 25 days, or 1 month. And it's a very good opportunity that we have then to be cultivating samadhi. That we don't have many different activities and duties, work to do. And even during the rest periods of this retreat, when you have free time, you should try to not send your mind outside. In particular, be really careful around communication devices, that only use them when it's necessary for you to be fulfilling your duties, and then when that's over, then just put them down, and then come back to having mindfulness and keeping a watch over your own mind, so that you can bring the mind to settle down into peace. Because if the mind is thinking a lot, if there's a lot of concocting that it's giving rise to, then what that means is that all that's coming from delusion. It's ignorance which is the cause for sankhara, for these conditions to arise. So it's this state of not knowing in the mind, which is then conditioning the mind, it's concocting the mind, bringing up these sankharas, or these conditions. And some of them are demeritorious, some of them are meritorious. But it's all within this process, or the cycle of the 12 steps of dependent origination. That there's ignorance, and then there's craving, clinging, which then leads on to suffering. So we need to try to bring our mind to a state of stillness in samadhi. We look after the mind, we are aware of what it's doing. And so if the mind is bringing up all these thoughts, this concocting, then we try to know that in time, know it as it's happening, and then teach ourselves that these things are not sure, that they're changing. And we just keep bringing that back, our minds back to that, keep re-establishing that knowledge in the mind that this is not sure, it's changing, until the mind stops. It puts down those thoughts, puts down that concoction, and then it settles into peace. And then in that state of peace, then there can be this rapture, piti, which fills up the heart. There's a great sense of happiness and joy in the heart. And so the arising of these states is something that's really significant. Because when we experience them, then we realize that this is the path of practice. And we steadily gain this knowledge that this is the way that will lead us to the end of suffering. And it's a putting down of suffering within our own hearts. The suffering that comes from clinging to self, that we steadily shed that from the heart. So some people are skilled in contemplating, and then if that's the case for you, then you should contemplate. So the body, for example, seeing that as being a heap of earth, water, fire, and air. So some people are very skilled at contemplating the intestines or the bowels, for example, and they can contemplate those as being just made of earth, and then that earth breaks into emptiness. Or we can look at the breath until that leads us into emptiness. Whatever it is that you're skilled at, that you feel competent at, then you should do that. Or contemplating the whole body as being a collection of earth, water, fire, and air. So you can see just the earth element in the body. Look at the bones and how those are just made up of earth. And contemplate the earth like this until you see it clearly. And so these different aspects of contemplation, they all lead us to the same place. So when we see clearly through our contemplation, then the mind settles into peace, the peace of samadhi. And do this frequently, contemplate frequently, until the mind really gathers together, and you see the body as merely a body. You see the earth element within the body, and then the heart settles into peace. And then when it's in a state of peace, then we can see that earth element break apart, and that there's really nothing left. There's just emptiness. And it's right here at this point that we see the body as merely a body. It's not a being, not an individual. It's not me, it's not you. And here is where we begin to understand the Dhamma. It's the arising of wisdom. So keeping the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, 227 precepts, that all of these have the arising of samadhi as their benefit. And then having that quality of samadhi in the mind, as we cultivate that, then it has wisdom as its benefit. And then wisdom, it gives rise to liberation, to freedom. And so we ordain for this purpose, and that we train in Sila, this virtue, for the sake of samadhi, and then samadhi for the sake of wisdom, wisdom for the sake of liberation. So therefore, when we increase the number of precepts that we take from the 5 precepts to the 8 precepts, and we start taking up the brahmacharya, the holy life, then there's a huge amount of benefit that comes from that. So therefore, having done that already, and having travelled, some of you from very far away, some of you from close by, but you've travelled this distance to come here. And may you really set your hearts on using this opportunity well. And for those who are ordaining, that you may not be in the robes for such a long time, but try to use that opportunity well, to really maintain your mindfulness, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, be reciting Buddha or Dhamma or Sangha. Have mindfulness there. Through all your activities, all your movements, try to maintain mindfulness. When you go into your dwelling, then bow to the Buddha image first, the first thing that you do. Before you leave your dwelling, then bow again. And when you come into a Dhamma hall, then it's the same. You come in, you bow. Before leaving, you bow. And also while listening to the Dhamma, then have mindfulness there. If you have your hands in Anjali, then you have mindfulness that your hands are now in Anjali. And sometimes you can feel kind of achy through that, but know that you're feeling tired. But the fact that you have the endurance to keep your hands up like that through the Dhamma talk, it's very praiseworthy. It's really a great way of training your mind. And there were some awakened teachers that when they would teach the Dhamma, they would have their hands in Anjali as they were teaching as well. And they would do that in homage to the Buddha. And that too is something that's really worthy of praise. So therefore, having travelled from far away, you should really try to get there, really try to get to where you should in your practice. Really set your hearts on this. And so you have the sincerity already. Faith is something that we just don't need to talk about. This is something that you all have. So faith in generosity, this is something that you all do a lot and have really cultivated this quality to a very full degree. So there's no need to explain to you the benefits of generosity. But now what you need to do is to have mindfulness looking after your mind. Whatever it is that you do, wherever it is that your mind goes to, then know that it's going there. And keep following up on it until it comes and settles down, becomes still, till samadhi arises. And so all the things in this world that eventually we need to all be separated from them, that we have to all leave them. This body is something which we reside in temporarily, and old age, sickness and death are steadily crawling towards us. The days, the nights are passing by. And right now, what are we doing? This is something that the Buddha asked. What are we doing right now? And we should contemplate this, contemplate the nature of time, how it passes so quickly. And for myself this year, I'll be 70 years old. And so this goes so fast. I've been thinking that I ordained when I was 22. I'll have 48 rains retreats completed. And really it's gone by in a flash. I think back to when I ordained, which was on the 3rd of July, 1976. And when I ordained, there was a monk that said to me that you should try to be a monk for at least 10 years. And I thought to myself, well, 10 years, that's such a long time. But now it's been 48 years that I've been a monk, and it really doesn't feel like it's long at all. The time just passes by like this. It goes fast. So therefore, for us all coming here, we should really set our hearts on trying to get there, trying to get to peace, trying to give rise to wisdom. And you can do that through taking this mind to contemplate the body. This is something that Ajahn Chah really emphasized in his teachings. taking our minds to contemplate the body, contemplating it as being a heap of earth, water, fire, and air, until you can enter into emptiness, can see anatta, not self, and see the Dhamma, and see all things as empty, and thereby seeing all things as Buddha. So may you all set your hearts on this.